Hey, Dr. Jon Finn here. Welcome to the Habit Mechanic podcast. Right now, you can get my new best-selling book, Train Your Brain for the AI Revolution, at tougherminds.co.uk. The digital book, audiobook, and physical book are all available at a special price that you won't find anywhere else.
Hello there, this is the Tougher Minds podcast. In this episode, Dr. Jon Finn talks about British golfer Georgia Hall and her victory in the British Women's Open tournament in the summer of 2018. Jon discusses how Georgia Hall's success was the result of deliberate planning on her part. He also explains how we can all benefit from setting ourselves major long-term goals and objectives.
Georgia Hall's British Open win was really interesting because after to the press she said, "It was my goal when I was 9 to win the British Open. I'm so happy." This wasn't an accident. She planned it. And when we step back from Georgia Hall and look at other successful people, there's a trend. There was actually a very famous business book written called Built to Last by some Stanford academics, and what they were looking at were successful businesses in the US over the last 100 years in terms of the stock exchange, and they were looking for businesses who'd been at the top of their game for a long time. And the way they would work this out is they would go back to the early 1900s and then find the emergence of Ford Motor Company, for example, on the stock market, and then find a similar car manufacturer. And these two stocks might have trended about the same level for a while, but at some point the other company disappeared and Ford carried on. And they were looking for what are the relationships between businesses like Ford, like Coca-Cola, like Disney. And they found a number of things these guys were doing similarly. One of those is what they called Big Hairy Audacious Goals. All these businesses had what the authors shortened to BHAGs. They all had BHAGs. Big, challenging targets they set for themselves, often unattainable things. But it was a consistent. And when we bring that to successful people, in other walks of life, it stands up as well. So Rory McIlroy also talked about wanting to win all the majors as a young guy. We know that Olympic athletes, they're planning their performance programs out years ahead about what they're going to attain at the Olympic Games. We know that the Williams sisters, for example, their father planned their progression to become world tennis superstars. And we can see other more recent business examples as well. So the question then is, why is it so powerful to set big goals? What do they do? Goal setting and motivation are connected. The way that I would think about motivation is its direction and intensity of effort, and goals give you something to aim towards. There are a number of reasons that big goals work. I think if you just dip into a few of them, that might be helpful. I think one of them is big goals tap into what we call self-fulfilling prophecies. Walt Disney famously said, "If you can dream it, you can do it." And there is a science that shows you are much more likely to be successful if you believe you can do it. Because when you start to set a goal that you believe and you buy into, your behaviours align behind that goal. And you start to act in a way that allows you to achieve that goal. If our goals are very meaningful to us, it's much more likely that we will achieve them. J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter, which is not only the biggest selling children's book of all time, but also the highest grossing movie franchise of all time, was famously rejected by several publishers. I think she got rejected 9 times. But she kept persisting because she had this big goal of becoming a published author. And she fulfilled her own prophecy. So that's one reason that big goals are powerful. Another reason I think big goals are powerful is because by setting a goal, you can see if you're making progress to it or not, as opposed to just saying, well, I want to be a good golfer. Setting yourself something very specific to work towards allows you to see progress in a much more accurate way. And what we're starting to understand is that one of the most important things for us to feel well and feel happy is to feel like we are making personal progress in our lives. And to understand that, we have to have something to measure where we're at, where we were at last week to where we're at now, measure that against, and big goals allow us to do that. So personal progress and our need for it is a real big reason, I think, why big goals are very, very powerful. And again, in the Georgia Hall example, last year she got close to winning the Open. She didn't quite do it, but she saw, she was making progress, so she carried, spurred her on this year to do that. And if you track the journey back to a 36 handicapper as a 9-year-old, she can see the journey that she's made from there to being this Open champion. I think the third reason that big goals are powerful is that, contrary to some beliefs from some people, is that goals actually allow you to reduce stress. Some people think goals are, I can't set big goals because it's too stressful for me. I would argue that it's more stressful if you don't have big goals, because goals are not set in stone. They are flexible and malleable. And actually having something written down that you're working towards is much more stress management friendly than something that's just very vague and intangible. If you've got something written down and it's not working out, or you don't feel like you're making progress towards it, you can change the goal, you can lessen it. So actually having goals, committing to them, allows you to pivot on them and actually change direction. So I think that's another reason why they're powerful. And we could go on, but if you want to achieve something in life, making it into what we actually call a FAM story, working out what do you want to achieve in the distant future, and connecting it back to your behaviours today, or what you need to start doing maybe differently, is a very, very powerful process. And it's something we get people across our programmes to do.
I'd just like to take you back briefly to what you talked about in terms of personal progress being a reason that setting goals is powerful. And I understand there's some research which shows the importance of this idea of seeing progress overriding other factors that people might view as more damaging in the workplace context.
Yeah, so in the workplace, where we're seeing increased levels of burnout, we often imagine that's to do with overload. But
too much work, maybe.
Yeah, too much work. Maybe also not being efficient and effective in doing our work because we're more distracted than ever before. But actually, what we also think, or what we think is a bigger factor than overload in burnout, is actually people feeling stifled, people feeling like they are not making progress in their lives. That's overwhelming. So personal progress, and this is what Greek philosophers call eudaimonia. Eudaimonia is about making personal progress. Is absolutely essential for feeling well in 21st century life. And if you're not in your life, if you don't feel like you're making progress in your life, you're not going to feel particularly well.
And just a final point then on your third point about overarching objectives and the power of them. This idea of pivoting, people might think that's slightly contradictory.
Yes. Goals are a tool you use to focus your attention on something. It isn't something you're not committing yourself to something for the rest of your life. It's a tool you can use to harness your energies. Our head of education, in fact, who studied history, I read history at Cambridge University, actually went to Cambridge to become a journalist. And at some point he decided that he didn't want to be a journalist and he wanted to become a teacher. But having the goal to become a journalist had driven his energies and efforts to get him to Cambridge, to read history, and everything he'd learnt along that journey helped him to pivot very quickly into becoming a really successful teacher. So you don't lose an hour of effort and energy put into something. If you have a big goal you're working towards, you're probably more likely to be efficient and effective with your time. Because that helps our brain to not just procrastinate on things, but to actually work towards progressing ourselves and bettering ourselves.
Thanks for listening. You can follow us on Twitter @TougherMinds and check out the website tougherminds.co.uk.
Thanks for listening to the Habit Mechanic podcast. If you liked it, please subscribe and tell someone else about one of the ideas or insights that you found most interesting.